And if the person next to you didn't say good afternoon back, would you say good afternoon to them? How glad you are to see them. And let's get excited about the 6th annual President's Interfaith and Community Service Campus Challenge. I am so excited, I don't know what to do. And seeing you out there just really brings great excitement and joy to my heart. For those of you who I have not met, I am Brenda Girton Mitchell, and I'm the director of the Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships at the U.S. Department of Education. I want to just have those of you for whom this is the first time you've been to a gathering, would you kind of stand up so the rest of us can celebrate you? If this is the first time you've been here. All right. Oh, my goodness. Wonderful. Thank you so much for investing the time and energy to be a part of what we hope, what we know will be a blessing for you, and you will be a blessing for us. This is our first year having the Campus Challenge on the campus of Gallaudet University, and I am honored that the president of Gallaudet is here to bring us words of welcome, even as we thank her and this institution for allowing us to be in their place, in their space. She is the 11th president of Gallaudet. Her tenure here started January 1, 2016. So every day is a new experience for her as their leader. And what I liked most out of the things that I read in her bio was that she has been labeled a transformational leader. And that's what the work we're doing here is about, transforming the way we relate to each other as we strive to create a more diverse and inclusive and welcoming world. So would you join me in welcoming President Cardano, the president of Gallaudet University. And as she comes, please know that this is being live streamed. And if you need the Wi-Fi, look in your packet. The Wi-Fi sign-on is there. President Cardano, we're glad to be here.
Now, right?
Hello, everyone. Hello and welcome. Welcome to the only place like this in the entire world. We are very proud to be part of Gallaudet University. This is the only university in the world like it, where we provide a bilingual education in both English and American Sign Language. Gallaudet is a microcosm of what we see in the rest of the world. We are a very rich and diverse community here. Our students are from abroad with different religious backgrounds and different cultural identities. Since the beginnings of this university, Gallaudet has recognized the importance of religious life and community service and exploration in both. As long back as 1880s, we have an example of how Gallaudet has been involved in this way. Gallaudet had one of the first deaf alumni pastors. His name is James Cloud, and he came to Gallaudet with an interest in the Episcopal faith. He was confirmed while a student here at the university. He went on to get his master's degree, well, of course, bachelor's and then master's degrees, both from Gallaudet, and then later was awarded an honorary doctorate of divinity from Gallaudet University. He went on to found the first All Souls Church in Philadelphia. And after his time in ministry, he went on to be a superintendent of the School for the Deaf in Mississippi. He continued his service to the community in providing spiritual support to deaf people in the Mississippi area and in the Missouri area. And the reason I share with you this story about this alum of the university is because James Cloud provided spiritual service to the community, a community that often is not serviced by the mainstream kinds of religious organizations. And you see, our role here at Gallaudet is a very important one in that we really attend to not only the intellectual development, but also the social and physical development of our students. And we strongly believe in the importance of also recognizing and attending to the spiritual growth of all of our students while they're here at the university, as do many of you as well. Again, I want to welcome you to Gallaudet University. We are thrilled and honored to be hosting this event here today on our wonderful campus. This is a historically significant place here, and I say that because it's only one of its kind in our 152 universities. We were founded in 1864, chartered by Abraham Lincoln, who is also a patron now of the university. And we are honored to host this very important initiative by President Obama, and we're honored to have you here in this community. Thank you all very much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, President Cardano. We're so grateful to be here at Gallaudet University, and welcome to the President's Interfaith and Community Service Campus Challenge. Very exciting to see all of you today. My name is Melissa Rogers. I serve as a special assistant to President Obama, and I direct the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. And it's my honor to bring you greetings from our President, Barack Obama. I'll have more to say later, but now we have a special treat for you right at the top of the program. It'll be a conversation between Carrie Hessler-Radelet, the director of the Peace Corps, and Tina Chen, who serves as the Chief of Staff for the First Lady, Michelle Obama. So this is a very exciting day for us, and we can't wait to get the conversation started. These ladies have incredibly busy schedules, and they've made time to be with us today, and we are so grateful for the leadership they provide. And they're going to be talking about a very important initiative, the Let Girls Learn initiative, that the First Lady has so ably led. And it provides a wonderful opportunity for interfaith cooperation. So without further ado, let me just turn the mic over to Carrie and Tina for a great conversation. Thank you. Please join me in welcoming them.
Hello, everyone. It is fantastic to see all of you. Just delighted to be here. I'm so thrilled to be here with my dear friend and colleague, Tina Chen, who I think you know has played such a critical role in elevating the whole issue of girls' education empowerment, not only with the First Lady, but also with the White House writ large. So Let Girls Learn is a powerful whole-of-government effort designed to break down barriers to girls' education around the world and unleash the potential, the unique potential of girls to make change, one family, one school, one community, one nation at a time. They have incredible power. And First Lady Michelle Obama has been a phenomenal, phenomenal leader in this area. How many of you saw the Colbert Show just a few days ago? It was phenomenal, wasn't it? She is such an extraordinary leader, and Tina has really been the force, I would say, behind that. She has been a powerful champion for girls' education her whole life, and we're so lucky to have her with us today.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carrie.
So Let Girls Learn was launched on March 3rd, 2015, about a year ago, a little more than a year ago. Since that time, we have launched, the Peace Corps has launched our part of it in 35 countries around the world. Our volunteers have a very unique role at the community level. They live and work in community. They begin to see the world through the community's eyes, and that gives them incredible insight into the opportunities for and barriers to girls' education and the credibility they need to help the communities lead change of their own, to identify solutions that make sense for them, and then implement community-led changes. So we are so fortunate to be with Tina today. We're a proud partner of Let Girls Learn. Through this initiative and with Tina's support and the First Lady's support, we have formed a lot of partnerships, unique public-private partnerships that have enabled Let Girls Learn to have a much broader platform than it ever would have. And we have partnerships with Alex and Ani, InStyle magazine, be sure to check out the October issue in particular, Land's End, UPS, Dining for Women, and a whole host of other partnerships, as well as Girl Scouts, Girl Rising, and Girls Inc. So it's an incredible, not only whole of government effort, but really a partnership that brings in all elements of American public and beyond. So Tina, we're so happy to have you here. Let's begin by just talking about how you got interested in the issue of girls' education empowerment. It's been something you've devoted your whole life to.
Oh, well, thank you, Carrie. First, let me say I am delighted to be here, and my thanks to Melissa Rogers and the whole team at the White House that has put this together over the last several years, and to Gallaudet University, which is my real great pleasure to be here at. So the power of girls' education is something I think many of us have known. You know, the First Lady talks about it herself as being, born out of her own personal life story. And she is acutely aware of how the public education that she got as a girl growing up on the south side of Chicago to parents who did not go to college themselves really transformed her life and her brother's life. Transformed the president's life, really propelled them to be where they are today. What I think she and I both learned during our time in the White House, though, in the international context, is how many girls around the world, go without education. And we're not even talking about just trying to improve the schools that they're at, are just simply not in school at all. And it was spurred in part by the real opportunity that we had to meet Malala, in October of 2013. I remember it acutely because for those of you who are from Washington, D.C., you will remember that it was during the government shutdown. So there was, no one, none of my staff were working. I was working, but none of my staff were working. And none of the staff that could easily get people through clearance, through the security, were there. So poor Malala and her father, who is such a force on this issue, waited in the rain for me to get them through security. It was very embarrassing. But we had an amazing conversation with Malala and the First Lady and the President, and just her courage and her passion to continue to be an advocate, and also her father's really eloquent support for his daughter's dream. I think he said something like, how could I not support this child getting educated? And then, on to sort of continuing to learn about girls who are putting their lives at risk, not just in Pakistan, but in Nigeria and elsewhere, to get an education, and how unique the issues are for adolescent girls. Because one of the things that we also learned as we studied this more was that, as a global community, we've done pretty well with primary education. Getting to gender parity at primary education was one of the Millennium Development Goals that we all have been working on for the past 15 years, and we did pretty well. But it just falls off the map when it comes to adolescent girls. And adolescents face particular challenges that are unique, and I believe they are rooted in the issues I've been doing my whole life, which are gender inequity. Yeah. When young girls become young women, then they are all of a sudden, really burdened with all of the societal pressures and discrimination that occurs to women. Yeah. And they are viewed as more valuable to their families as a child bride, or as labor, either free labor or paid labor. They're certainly not worth the investment that a family thinks it has to make in paying for the school fees. So we, as a result, we have, over 62 million girls around the world who are, excluded from school right now.
So when you were dreaming up Let Girls Learn, what were your hopes for it? What did you think about as a result?
Well, we took it's more than a year to really think about it, talk to a lot of people. The good news is that we're, I think, at a moment on girls' education. As you can see in the conversation around the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals
Yeah.
last year or earlier this year, when the world came together to reformulate these goals, and girls' education, women, gender parity and education for girls through secondary school became a big part of that. So we're in a moment where a lot of people are doing things, and we were very conscious about not replicating what somebody else has been doing, but lifting it up, trying to figure out what was the space that was not occupied. One of the goals was obviously to increase our own U.S. development aid, which we have done. So we're now, as a U.S. government, contributing about $500 million towards adolescent girls' education, which we're very proud of. Increasing the development assistance by other countries as well. But we also discovered in our conversations with activists on the ground, many of whom came to us and said, well, look, don't come tell us what to do. Don't come and tell us to do child marriage or FGM. We know. We actually know in our communities what to do. And so we went through a thought process of, well, community-based change, is very Obama-like.
Yeah,
It's sort of rooted in
absolutely.
the
Yeah.
president and the first lady's own, history. But it's challenging to think about how to do community-based change on a global scale. And we went through one process where we thought, well, maybe we'll do 5 or 6 sites. I remember Susan Rice telling me, why would you only do 5 or 6 sites? And then we realized we had the Peace Corps,
Yeah.
that we already have, amazing community organizers who are trained in community organizing and are expert at it in over half a century of service around the globe. And you became our, ground troops to do this kind of community-based change, and you have just been a great partner. Not every agency, Carrie, that we go to with an idea from the White House says, "Oh, we'll work with you on it." There's a lot of agencies who say, "Not so much." You were really wonderful in seizing the opportunity and really embedding it within the Peace Corps' programming. So in very short order, we've only been at this, right, a year and a half.
Yeah.
And, we're in over, with trained Peace Corps volunteers, right, in over 35 countries.
35 countries. I can give you a few statistics, actually.
Right.
We have trained 2,800 volunteers in the skills needed to lead community change. Our volunteers have implemented 280 distinct and different projects, and over 34,000 girls aged 25 and under have benefited from
Wow.
girls-led activities.
It's
And
great.
It is.
It's in a year and a half.
A year and a half. And you have to imagine that the first 3 or 4 months were just like getting the groundwork laid. So really, it's been about a year of full implementation. And I think the other really telling thing is that more than $500,000 has been contributed by communities themselves in support of these programs. So,
Well, and that's where the reason the community-based change is
Yeah.
so important is that's where hearts and minds really change, is when communities themselves feel empowered to identify the barriers just in our community to our girls getting their education, and then getting the support from the Let Girls Learn Fund, from the Peace Corps to do the project. It could be a water project, it could be school fees, it could be a girls' empowerment training. But that's how fathers and mothers will then see the potential in their girls, and we can really actually change those underlying cultural barriers. So, it's your work on the groundwork has been very important.
it has been fabulous, and our volunteers love it, and we really feel like it's part of our DNA. It was such a natural partnership.
But the thing, so the take action part, I think what's exciting for the folks who are here is we also wanted it to be a broader awareness raising for the globe, so not just in the developing world, but the developed world as well, and that there's a take action piece to it. So what's been particularly exciting about Let Girls Learn is, for example, our partnership with Girls Inc. and Girl Scouts, but it could be a partnership with the faith community, with colleges and universities, with folks. And what that is we have a website, letgirlslearn.gov. If you go to the website, you can learn about, what Let Girls Learn is, but you can also be linked to the Peace Corps' website, where if you were interested in Africa, you could click on Africa, you could click on Malawi, you could then go and see the projects in specific communities in Malawi that the Peace Corps volunteers are working on, and then see the funds that they're trying to raise. And so we have a little crowdsourcing, fundraising that occurs at Let Girls Learn, on the Peace Corps page. And you can, both learn about the issue, learn about a particular part of the world through the voice of an American volunteer, and then take action, direct action, to affect change in that community. And so we have had like middle school kids who've been selling popsicles to raise money, Girl Scout troops that are learning about the issue and getting together to raise money for it. For those of you who are organizers on campus, I think it'd be a great thing for campuses to get organized around, to both be greater voices, to advocate for girls' education, but then also take very specific action to raise funds for very specific projects where you can see the progress that's being made on the ground.
It strikes me that this is a fantastic audience because we have university presidents, we have faculty, we have students from 9 different countries, I understand, and from hundreds of universities across the country, all of whom are driven by their faith to seek good, to serve the cause of good and building up humanity. So Let Girls Learn seems like a very natural partnership.
Well, and I will say that, the other piece about girls' education that we know, and we know this from studies by UNESCO, by the World Bank, by others, is that I've taken now to saying that I think girls' education is as close to the golden key as we have to so many problems that we are all concerned about. Ending poverty, improving maternal mortality, improving health outcomes, whether it's AIDS, or other diseases in the developing world, increasing GDP, and importantly, having greater peace and security around the globe. I think educating girls is the key because we know that the more a girl is educated, the more her lifetime earnings will increase, and therefore whole countries' GDP will go up. We know that health outcomes are better because women who are educated, then are better able to have HIV compliance, teach their children to be HIV compliant, or pay more attention and reinvest their earnings in their family's health. And there's more peace and stability throughout. I've often taken to saying now there is a reason why the Taliban targeted Malala and why the Boko Haram went after the girls who were in school in Nigeria, is that they know, those who mean to do harm to a community know that the best way to disrupt a community is to keep the girls uneducated.
That's so true, so sad. I think this White House has done more than any other to engage with social media and just entertainment in general. And I love some of the great work that the First Lady has done with entertainers and with singers. And maybe you could talk about that a little. That's so much fun. And I think that this audience would really like to hear about that.
Well, it's been fun because one of the things the First Lady says, you have to go, people aren't really watching the evening news, for any of our press colleagues, maybe in the audience, the sad news is they're not reading the mainstream papers or the evening news so much, but they are watching things like Colbert or James Corden's Carpool Karaoke or,
Fantastic, by the way.
Right, they're on these websites. So it actually, one of the things we started with is a year ago, the First Lady went to the Global Citizens Concert when we launched, a social media effort around this and got people like Beyonce and Bono and others to tweet out about the 62 million girls who are not in school. We had Diane Warren, who is the award-winning songwriter, and she is the woman who wrote the song that if you watched the Oscars, Vice President Biden introduced this song about sexual assault. She also had a song about girls' empowerment called This Is For My Girls, which she donated, and we have Kelly Rowland on it, and Zendaya, and Kelly Clarkson, as an ensemble, singing This Is For My Girls. It's on iTunes, and 100% of the proceeds from the downloads go to the Let Girls Learn Fund. I'm not selling things because I'm from the White House, but I'm just stating the fact that should you go on iTunes, you will find This Is For My Girls.
Yes.
And that was the song, that was the reason we did Carpool Karaoke, for those of you who saw James Corden driving around and around and around the White House driveway with the First Lady, because we didn't go out on the street, they just had to go round and around and around on the driveway. The reason she did Carpool Karaoke was they sang This Is For My Girls, on James Corden, and that's why we went on the Colbert Show on Monday, was to promote, on Tuesday rather, to promote Let Girls Learn as well. And, that's that awareness raising, and then that's, encouraging people to go to letgirlslearn.gov, to take action and do something to promote girls' education. I mean, I'm of the belief that you need to change that political awareness and environment, because if we do want more investment by governments in education, which we do, you have to create political will for
Yeah,
those
right.
politicians to act.
Absolutely.
And we can only do that through the general public, and you got to go where the public is, so they're on popular media.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to get back to, this is one last question because we're a little bit almost out of time, but I want to get back to what you just started with, and that is you and the First Lady have spoken to many other foreign governments to
Yes.
get them to increase their investment in girls' education. Could you talk about that for a moment?
Yes. So since we launched Let Girls Learn, all of the First Lady's foreign travel has been geared around Let Girls Learn. So right away last March, after we did our announcement here in Washington, the First Lady and Carrie came along with us. We traveled to Cambodia to launch Let Girls Learn in Cambodia. But before we got to Cambodia, we went to Japan. And we were able, together with Mrs. Abe, the Prime Minister's wife, to announce, an increase in Japan's assistance, their foreign assistance to girls' education, and a partnership between their version of the Peace
Absolutely.
Corps
Yes.
and our Peace Corps to do the same work, in promoting girls' education. We've been able to have successful conversations with the UK, who increased their development assistance. Canada, has stepped up when the Canadians were here for their state visit with their new Prime Minister Trudeau. When we were in Spain, the First Lady talked about it with Queen Letizia of Spain. So we've been promoting that. And on Monday, so for many of you may know that the UN General Assembly is currently meeting in New York. The President spoke there yesterday. We were up there with him on Monday and Tuesday. And on Monday, before we went on the Colbert Show, the First Lady had an event for about 50 of the leaders' spouses. So we have a spousal event for the spouses of the world leaders who are there. And we took them to a Broadway theater, and they got to both hear some great Broadway shows around empowered women, like Wicked and The Color Purple. But in between, the First Lady spoke, Queen Rania of Jordan spoke, the First Lady of Malawi spoke about what they are doing to promote girls' education. The whole theme was around girls' education
fantastic.
and really urging those leaders to do something. That particular part of that program I want to mention was USAID brought in 2 girls from Pakistan, a young woman from Malawi, and a young woman from Jordan, who are part of USAID programs in those countries, who spoke incredibly powerfully around their own work to overcome the barriers they have to get an education. In particular, I think all of us who were there will particularly remember 15-year-old Halima from Malawi, who spoke through an interpreter. She was married at age 15 to a 30-year-old man.
Wow.
By her family. And she finally had the courage to say, this isn't right.
Yeah.
After some period of time being married to him and not being in school, this is not right. USAID funds a mother's group in her community of women who support young girls, and she went to her husband. It is horrible to say a 15-year-old has a husband, but she went to her husband and said, if you don't let me go, the mother's group is going to come after you. And she left, now lives with her grandmother and goes to school. She said, I don't eat 3 meals a day, but I do go to school every day.
Oh, man, what a powerful story. Wow. Unbelievable. Well, Tina, it has been such a privilege to be able to have this conversation with you today. I want everyone here to know that if you're interested, we're going to do a breakout session on Let Girls Learn. We have a whole team here, and they're thrilled to talk to you about this program.
All right. Thank you all.
Tina, I want to thank you for your leadership. I mean, you have just demonstrated tremendous leadership, both within the White House, the whole of government, but also just in this country and across the globe. You are such a recognized leader and such an inspiration for all of us.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you
As are
so
you,
much.
Carrie. Thank you. Thank you
you
very much.
Tina, thanks.
Oh, thank you.
I have stamping to the speech.
Thank you so much.
Well, now you get to hear from me again. Let me just get ready for 1 second. Excuse me, is it possible to get a little light here? It's hard to maybe if I step back. All right. Hello, everyone. So it was really exciting, wasn't it, hearing about Let Girls Learn? And I have to say that that has been one of the most energizing initiatives that we have undertaken at the Peace Corps. It has unleashed so much passion among our volunteers in the communities. And when the extended Peace Corps family gets excited about something, watch out. It is a force to be reckoned with. Of course, we are also hard at work at addressing other development challenges, challenges which take place in villages and towns across the globe, challenges that take place at the intersection of life, where diverse communities come together to live and work. This is where our commitment to interfaith cooperation and community service begins. And that's what I want to talk to you about right now, today. But first, before I tell you about Peace Corps' roots in interfaith service and how interfaith cooperation has empowered our volunteers to make an incredible difference in communities across the globe, I want to start with a story, which in my mind is always the best way to start. It's a story about Peace Corps volunteer Peter Terr, whose improbable journey may sound as if it was out of a novel. But I don't think you could make up a character like Peter with his grit, determination, compassion, and search for unconditional love. Growing up in South Sudan, Peter had never heard of the Peace Corps, not in his early childhood days when his family was brutally murdered by Sudanese militiamen, when he was forced to flee his village and his country, and where he wandered with a band of boys for 9 years. Not in the time after that, after years in a refugee camp, where he learned to read and write by tracing letters and numbers in the sand. Not even later, in his early 20s, when Peter, with the help of the United Nations, eventually made his way to the United States and to university. Peter didn't learn about the Peace Corps until he met a professor at the University of Florida who was a returned Peace Corps volunteer. Peter told his professor that his greatest wish was to give back to the country, the United States, that had given him a home. And his professor told him about the Peace Corps. And that's when Peter knew that the Peace Corps was for him. When Peter applied, he said that he would serve anywhere. His only request of Peace Corps was that could he please be placed in a Muslim country, because he did not want his life defined by fear and hatred for people who shared a faith with the men who had murdered his family. Peter told me that he knew in his head that Islam is a peaceful religion, that it had believers who were filled with love for each other and for the world. He knew in his head that it was a religion of tolerance and compassion. But in his heart, he still held fear and anger, born in his traumatic early years. The only way he knew to learn to love Muslims was to live among them. And so that was his request of the Peace Corps. He received an assignment to teach in Azerbaijan, where he was placed in a remote community where he was the first American they had ever seen, and they had never seen a person of color. Yet in Peter's words, what surprised me the most was how human love and connection became stronger than my family's tragic history and deeper than the color of my skin. Peter served for 3 years in that village, teaching English, leading boys and girls leadership camps, building strong relationships of love and trust that will never, ever end. He loved Peace Corps so much that he re-upped again and served 2 years in China. And then he served 2 more years in Georgia, where he is now currently. And in Georgia, he's actually working with Azeri refugees. So he has continued his deep commitment to building peace and tolerance in that part of the world. In his words, the best way to learn about the world and to make a difference is by being fearless for the sake of wanting to do good things for humanity. Reconciling differences, building bridges, fearlessly seeking good, pursuing peace. In so many ways, this is the power and potential of interfaith cooperation, whether at the individual level or across communities or indeed across the world. We've seen it on college campuses as interfaith service has brought people of different religions and different religious faiths or non-religious faiths together to tackle common community challenges. We've seen it across communities in crisis as interfaith cooperation has brought relief and hope to the most devastated, most vulnerable, and the most underserved. We've seen it in developing nations where faith-based organizations are uniquely positioned to help lift up the marginalized, to shine a light on the voiceless, to work, as Peace Corps volunteers do, at the very last mile of development. In the words of President Obama, the particular faith that motivates each of us can promote a greater good for all of us. Instead of driving us apart, our varied beliefs can bring us together to feed the hungry and comfort the afflicted, to make peace where there is strife and rebuild what is broken, to lift up those who have fallen on hard times. That understanding has shaped the Peace Corps from the very beginning. In 1961, at the height of the Cold War, our program was founded on the idea that a small group of Americans could serve our country in the cause of peace by living and working in developing countries. It was considered a radical idea at the time. As a federal agency, we are a secular organization, but Peace Corps' first director, Sergeant Shriver, was a man of deep faith, and that faith was his guiding light as he established the foundations of the Peace Corps. The principles that Sarge wove into the Peace Corps, social justice and humility, love and action, and a commitment to service, are not unique to his faith or any one faith. These principles are embedded in all faiths, mostly, in so many different faiths, providing a common vocabulary for interfaith cooperation across different cultures and across different traditions. I think of volunteers like Taj and Kamar Nouri, who moved to the United States from Pakistan in their early 20s. They built a life together in California and they raised a family. When they retired, they were motivated by their faith to join the Peace Corps. Taj said that she felt compelled to work with everyone with compassion, as the Quran clearly states, to serve humanity, to serve your neighbor, any neighbor, regardless of faith tradition, is what each good Muslim should do. She and her husband accepted an assignment in the Christian nation of Zambia, where Taj served as a health volunteer and where Kamar worked as a rural aquaculture volunteer. There, they built close relationships with their local church leaders, who became their closest friends, allies, and counterparts in their efforts around community economic development and health education. In Zambia, they discovered they were respected for their deep religious beliefs, even though their faith was very different from those of their neighbors. And they were beloved from their community because of their devotion to their community. A devotion that, in Taj's words, came simply from a desire to serve humanity as instructed by her faith. Since our founding by President John F. Kennedy 55 years ago, more than 22,000 Peace Corps volunteers have served in 140 host nations around the world, from the mountains of Nepal to the savannas of Tanzania to the coastlines of Nicaragua. Volunteers don't just go the extra mile, they stay, living side by side with their neighbors, doing the work that their neighbors have asked them to do. Volunteers are trained to speak the local language, to understand the local culture. They are trained with the technical skills that they need to do their jobs. And they go there to do a particular job. They are teachers, they are health workers, they are youth entrepreneurship coaches, but they do so much more. They sip tea with village elders. They play soccer with the primary school kids. They hang out with the pregnant lady next door. They get to know their community deeply, and they build strong relationships of trust and love that, as we talked about earlier with Tina, are what give them both the opportunity, the insight into the needs of the community, but also the credibility that they need to be able to introduce new evidence-based tools and approaches to help the community lift up themselves. They will be the first to tell you that they are not superheroes. What they are is dedicated. In recent years, through Peace Corps' Faith Initiative, we have sought to open up even more platforms for interfaith dialogue and cooperation. We are opening up new dialogues with houses of worship and increasing our outreach to communities of faith. We are fostering interfaith dialogue and celebrating the rich, diverse faith traditions of our staff, our volunteers, and the communities in which we serve. At a time when inclusion, respect, appreciation for difference, and mutual understanding seem more elusive than ever, interfaith service can teach us that even when we do not see eye to eye, we can still stand with someone heart to heart. Interfaith service can illuminate pathways to common ground. Interfaith service can inspire fearless action for the good of humanity. At a time when there is so much driving us apart, let our faith be the tie that binds us all together. Let our faith be the reminder, in the words of President Obama, that we are our brother's keepers and we are our sister's keepers. Thank you.
my wings. Did I ever tell you you're my hero? You're everything, everything I wish I could be. Oh, night, I can fly higher than an eagle. You are the wind beneath my wings. 'Cause you are the wind beneath my wings. Oh, the wind beneath my wings. You are the wind beneath my wings. Fly, fly away. You let me fly so high. Oh, you, the wind beneath my wings. Oh, the wind beneath my wings. Fly, fly so high against the sky, so high I almost touch the sky. Thank you, thank God for you, the wind beneath my wings.
Thank you again to the dancers. They were really terrific. Well, again, it's just such a pleasure to be here with all of you. I am just enjoying seeing your faces and celebrating all we have achieved together and looking forward to the future and how we can carry the momentum of this effort through the end of the administration and then beyond. I want to again tell you how honored I am to be able to bring you greetings from our President, Barack Obama, and I want to give you his profound thanks for what you've done. You have built this initiative with us over the past 6 years, and we are tremendously grateful. We are so grateful for the way in which you have extended your hands across your differences, for the way in which you have served your neighbors, and for your willingness to sit down with us all along the way and plot the future of this initiative. This is one of those efforts that would not have succeeded had government tried to do it all on its own. We needed you, and you came to answer that call, and you built this initiative in ways we could not have ever anticipated, and we just want to, again, express our deep thanks for that. You know, for those of you who may be new to the initiative this year, just want to go back and refresh our memories about how this got started. This actually got started as a part of a recommendation of the President's Advisory Council on Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. And I actually had the privilege of being able to chair that council. It was before I came to work at the White House, so I remember it well. And the Advisory Council is, like this initiative, just one of the many initiatives that the President established to try to make sure that the White House was really working in concert with faith and community groups all across the nation and across the world. So the President wanted to get ongoing advice and guidance from a group of religious and community leaders. And that's why he established the President's Advisory Council on Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, an entity that did not pre-exist his administration. And so when we came together in that body, we had an amazing diversity of leaders around the table. And I will always remember the leadership of my friend Ibu Patel of the Interfaith Youth Corps, who guided us to think about what an initiative like this could become. And so as we sat and talked around the table, we ended up forming a recommendation to the president that he launch what became the President's Interfaith and Community Service Campus Challenge. So the initiative came to us from you, and then we turned back around to you to build it. And I think that's been one of the amazing experiences of working in this White House, of that partnership with the community. So we looked at what we needed to do, and we had a lot of work before us at that time. We needed to figure out how we could engage institutions of higher learning, both staff, administration, and students across the country in building partnerships to serve people in need, and also to build understanding across our religious differences. And we needed to do that quickly. So the president sent out a letter to colleges and universities across the United States and invited them to be part of the challenge, invited you to be part of the challenge. And you responded. And each year we built more participation in the challenge. And now in its 6th year, more than 500 schools have been or are currently involved in the challenge. And currently, 12% of American college students who attend schools with more than 1,000 students are enrolled at a participating school. So these are some of the accomplishments that are our accomplishments together. As you also know, in 2015, we opened the challenge to international participation and individuals from around the world. And now we have representatives from more than 20 countries participating in the challenge, and we're so glad that the international element of this challenge has been built, and we're so pleased that we have people not only from all around the country, but all around the world with us here today. So everybody, please give yourselves a round of applause. Through this initiative, countless collaborations have been launched and executed, bettering our country and our world. Let me just mention one as an illustration. Several years ago, 16 students, 9 Jewish and 7 Muslim, from New York University assembled in Birmingham, Alabama, to lend their hands to recovery efforts after a deadly tornado attack. The twisters leveled neighborhoods and left thousands homeless, with more than 1 million without power. The students from NYU participated in rebuilding efforts, working with Habitat for Humanity. The trip to Birmingham was part of the Interfaith and Community Service Campus Challenge. And during the trip, participants talked about what motivated them to serve, and then they actually engaged in that service. And after the period of service, one of the participants said, "If we can learn from one another and develop an understanding of our similarities and differences, we can stand together as human beings in an effort to better the world around us." And this kind of collaboration in various ways, in various forms, including people of all faiths and none, have happened around the country and around the world because of the challenge. Well, we know that the challenges that this initiative seek to meet are timely, to say the least. It's already been mentioned that President Obama was at the UN General Assembly earlier this week. And in his remarks at the UN General Assembly, the president described this moment in history in the following way. He said, "This is the paradox that defines our world today. A quarter century after the end of the Cold War, the world is by many measures less violent and more prosperous than ever before. And yet, our societies are filled with uncertainty, unease, and strife. Despite enormous progress, as people lose trust in institutions, governing becomes more difficult and tensions between nations become more quick to surface. And so I believe that at this moment, we all face a choice. We can choose to press forward with a better model of cooperation and integration, or we can retreat into a world sharply divided and ultimately in conflict along age-old lines of nation and tribe and race and religion. That choice could not be more important. And with this gathering, we demonstrate the choice we are making, a decision to move forward together. Now, some would say that the only way we can move forward together is to bracket discussions of religion and belief. We can't talk about that. That might fracture our ability to hang together. President Obama takes a very different approach. He believes that recognition of our varied beliefs can bring us together instead of driving us apart, that these discussions can create bridges rather than walls. Now, if we ever thought we could bracket religion from these important conversations, it is more clear than ever today that trying to do so would be a mistake. Let me quote a bit from a recent speech by Secretary Kerry. He said, "Consider that 4 out of 5 people on earth align themselves with one religious tradition or another, and that over the centuries, religious teachings, movements, and conflicts have done as much as any secular ideology or economic force to determine the political context and geographical boundaries that define the international arena. Religion today," Secretary Kerry said, "remains deeply consequential, affecting the values, the actions, the choices, the worldviews of people in every walk of life on every continent, and obviously also here at home. It is part of what drives some to initiate war, others to pursue peace, some to organize for change, some to resist modernity, some to reach eagerly across the borders of nation and creed, and others to build higher and higher walls separating one group from the next." As Secretary Kerry has said, we ignore the global impact of religion at our peril. And indeed, would be impossible to understand our nation or our world without understanding something about religion. And that is true whether we're talking about Biloxi, Mississippi, Beirut, Lebanon, or Bangkok, Thailand. Conversations and cooperation across faith and beliefs help us to better understand our world, to recognize the actual religious aspects of the landscape in which we are operating, and to build a better future together. Well, just as you have been engaging in interfaith dialogue and cooperation across the country and around the world, we have our own forms of interfaith cooperation and dialogue at the White House, even among the staff. And I have the privilege now of introducing you to 2 of my colleagues who are wonderful people to work with on these very important issues. I want to welcome Hanan Weissman, who engages with the Jewish community on behalf of the President and the White House, and also Zaki Al-Barzanjini, who is the White House liaison for the American Muslim community and other faiths. It is a great privilege to work with both of them. I should note that Zaki's position was created by the administration just during the past year, and it has been wonderful to welcome him to the staff and to work with both Zaki and Hanan on these very important issues of interfaith cooperation and understanding. So without further ado, let me welcome them to bring you greetings and a few words on their own behalf. Please join me in welcoming them.
How about now? That's what I'm talking about.
That was interfaith collaboration right here.
Always working together, always working together. We planned that. So the year was 1790, okay? The country was young, the Jewish community was young, and the newly elected president of the United States was visiting a small community called Newport, Rhode Island. And the Jewish community in Newport, Rhode Island, very excited, sent a letter of congratulations to President George Washington. In response, the president sent another letter to that community. And in that letter, some of you are familiar with the sentence, and some of you might not be, but for me, it's become sort of a founding credo. The United States gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance. Again, the United States gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance. That's kind of been the founding credo for religious liberty in the United States for the last 200 plus years. And it's been a comforting element for the American Jewish community throughout that time period. Fast forward 200 plus years, I can't do the math, but last year, there I was, sitting in another synagogue down the block here in DC called Addis Israel. And the president, this time the 44th president of the United States, gets up there and utters the same words. The US gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance. Again, this is what it means to be an American citizen. This is what it means to live in this country, not just for the Jewish community, but for the Muslim community, for the Buddhist community, for communities that don't necessarily identify with a religion. This is the founding credo. This is what it means to be proud of your Muslim identity and proud of your American identity, proud of your Jewish identity and proud of your American identity, proud of your Buddhist identity and proud of your American identity. You get where I'm going with this, right? This is what we, the people, mean. It's not just the first 3 words of the Constitution. It's an invitation to huddled masses from distant lands to come here to the United States, to maintain their sense of self while reaching out to others, to maintain their own identity while connecting with people of different identities, to becoming actively involved in your community while reaching out to folks outside of your community. Because by being engaged in your community, you are strengthening your country. And that's just not the case for folks here in the United States. That's the case for every country all over the world. It's no surprise that the President of the United States was a community organizer before he became the most powerful person on the planet, right? He understood this concept. He understood this concept. And it's this concept that animates the way I look at my position as the White House liaison to the Jewish community. I'm confident, right? Same with you too. So just very briefly, it was last week, and we had an event at the White House. And there was this new movie by Ken Burns, the documentary filmmaker. And the movie talked about this Unitarian minister and his wife, who was a social worker in the late 1930s, who risked their lives in order to save the lives of Jewish refugees before the start of World War II. And they did. They saved the lives of 100 plus individuals. And so we invited all of them to the White House, and we asked both the survivors and their descendants to stand up, and we asked the saviors' descendants to stand up. And it was a fascinating conversation. And at the tail end, there was a question and answer session. And one person from the back, a young guy, someone in university, raised his hand and said, "This is great, but what can I do as a college student? What can I do to assist the refugee issue today, here in 2016? Fast forward 2 days, and Ken Burns and his co-director did an interview on Charlie Rose, PBS. And Charlie Rose asked him about this event at the White House. And Ken Burns could have talked about anything, but you know what he talked about? He highlighted that one question from that student sitting in the back of the row who asked, "What can I do?" If you're in this room today, you're trying to answer that same question. What can you do? What can you do to reach out to people of different faith while maintaining your own faith? What can you do to strengthen and develop your community in order to strengthen and develop your country? As was just mentioned, my position has existed for several decades, but I've had the distinct honor of working with Zaki, whose position was created several months ago. And so with that, I just want to hand over the mic to my colleague, Zaki Barzinji.
Thank you. Wow. I asked Haran to go first because I knew that he would blow you guys away, and I would be left just having to say a few very simple words. That's leadership. I'm very honored to be with all of you here today. As Melissa said, and as Hanan said, I did not inherit this position from anybody else. I'm the first person, for better or for worse, to serve primarily as the White House liaison to the Muslim American community. As you can imagine, it's not the easiest job to have these days, but it is also a reason why the work that we do is so important. I kind of see my role as being several things. The first thing that the first major part of my role, and the reason why, even though I've only joined 4 months ago, we only have 4 months left in this administration, the reason why the work we do is still so important is because I don't have to tell you that we're at a time where we feel like often the angriest voices are the only ones we ever hear. And I don't have to go into detail about what exactly that means, but it's a perception that we all feel, and particularly within the Muslim community, it's a daily reality to know that that's what's out there. And so a big, major part of our job, of my job in the White House, is to identify and uplift and highlight positive stories of Muslim Americans all around the country who every day are giving back to their communities, who every day are making a difference, who every day are using their God-given talent and potential to make their broader communities so much better and so much more beautiful. And so highlighting positive narratives is such a huge part of what we do because it's easy to get depressed, it's easy to feel disenchanted, it's easy to feel like the angry voices are the only ones we ever hear, and that is just a reality that we have to succumb to. I reject that notion, and I think that together we can work together to highlight the very amazing, positive, beautiful stories from around this nation. Second part of what we have to do, though, is to provide resources to communities that face constant discrimination and issues of harassment and things like that. And so what we've been doing at the White House is having a series of engagements with Muslim communities across the country to let them know that there are resources provided by the federal government to protect your houses of worship from instances of arson or attacks or things like that. But one of the most important things that we can do is also talk directly to young Muslim students around the country who often are at the very forefront of bullying, harassment, intimidation, and all the rest. And many of you know this because you come from education settings. As the president said, our message to young Muslim youth and young minority youth in general is, you belong right here. Don't ever let anybody make you feel like you are second-class citizens. Your voice matters and your voice is heard, and you have nothing to apologize for and everything to be proud of. That's a message that we have to spread across our work in every community that we deal with. And one final example of what we've been doing in the past few months, so I don't know if you guys know this, but the president every night reads 10 letters. He himself will read 10 letters and respond to them personally on a personal basis and give his own personal touch to those letters. And they're not always letters that say, oh, you're the best president ever. There are all kinds of letters. So when I joined, one thing that I asked for was, I know that this has been going on, I wanted to see actually like letters that have come from young Muslims in particular from around the country in just the past year or so. And there were many, many letters from young Muslims from around the country who wrote directly to the president. And when you write a letter to the president, you don't think that anybody's going to ever see it. You think you're just throwing it out into the void. No one's ever going to, see what happened. But somebody read it, and that person was me, and that person was also the president. And some of these letters are so inspiring and so beautiful. Some of them are so heartbreaking. Like we had one letter that came from a young Muslim Somali woman in Washington State who said that on a daily basis, even though I was born in this country, I feel marginalized both because I'm black and also because I'm Muslim. I'm black and I wear the hijab, and on a daily basis I face harassment and bullying for both of those parts of my identity. And I feel like nobody ever hears me and my voice doesn't matter. So one thing that we did was we brought that young lady to the White House. We had her introduce the president at our Eid reception and be embraced by the community and have a whole room of the top Muslim leaders in the country applaud her and say, you are on the right track, your voice matters, and you should never feel like you are marginalized. You always have the support that you need. That is exactly the kind of work that I hope that we can work together to do over the next few months. You guys are at the forefront of a lot of this work. Whatever I can do to be helpful, whatever we can do in the White House to be helpful, please let us know. But thank you so much for all that you do. And I hope that over the next few weeks we can be even more successful and continue these conversations and get to the deeper truths and the deeper universal meanings that bring us all together. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You can see why it's great to be able to work with those two fine individuals. Zaki mentioned the president's visit to the Baltimore Mosque, and it was an amazing, amazing part of the last year and a great opportunity for us to think about these issues of interfaith cooperation and understanding. And so we are very encouraged to be able to continue this work over the next few months. And I should say that the president has been very clear to us that we are to break the tape. We are to run till the very last minute, working hard until the very last minute of the administration, and then all the while figuring out how we can make sure that we extend the good projects and the good work that we've done beyond the administration. So we look forward to continuing to do that. Well, we have with us a wonderful friend who is going to bring a couple of words now, and that is Martha Cantor. Many of you will remember Martha when she was undersecretary at the Department of Education. She was a key ally and continues to be a key ally, even though she has moved on from the administration. She came and helped with the Campus Challenge when it was getting started and got it off to a really good start. She is current director of College Promise and serves as the Distinguished Visiting Professor of Higher Education and Senior Fellow at New York University. So Martha's going to join us and give us a few words about where we can go from here in terms of college access and completion. So Martha, please join us and join me in giving a warm welcome to Martha Cantor.
I think I was the shortest person in the administration, but I'm tall now. I'm thrilled to be here. I just have a few minutes, so I'm just going to put up a couple of slides. But, you know, I hear a lot of people talking about what's going to happen next. Where will we go? And I think back 6 years ago to when I met Reverend Brenda Gurton Mitchell, and we started planning for the Interfaith and Community Service Challenge, and year after year, what happened and watched. Now it has grown to over 500 colleges and universities, and I think to myself, well, we've got 4,500 out there that are accredited. You are a movement. You are going to be the leaders going forward, and it really takes me back, not yesterday, but 100 years ago. Because, you know, when you think of what we started as a nation, and you think of college opportunity, and you think of how very few people had the opportunity, and then you go forward, fast forward to the 1950s, and you think of the GI Bill, and you think about how people came together to say, you know, and my father was among them, you know, the men and women that fought for freedom in World War II, and the Korean War, and now the Vietnam War, and now the wars that we still have over these many years. We came together as a nation, and the Interfaith Challenge wasn't what it is today. We didn't have to face the economic, the political, the social, the emotional polarization, the religious polarization, all of these divided feelings and actions that have caused, I think, you know, President Obama's administration, the First Lady, the President, everyone that thinks about the future to say, look, let's step back a minute and think about our values and our investments. And so when I think about the College Promise going forward, and I put up there, you know, I was a professor for the last couple years, now I'm sort of back at it. You know, what will it take for the country to invest in the future of our country? And what kinds of investments do we need to make? Social, emotional, political, civic, community, state, and national. So I think about the College Promise at NYU, and you know, 3 years ago when I left the administration after 5 years, I went to NYU. It was a refuge for me. Like for many of you, your institutions are a refuge for so many people of so many ages. And I went and I looked at what would it take to at least provide, in the big picture, an affordable education for all. What does that mean? So this is not a new idea. This is a value, this is an investment that we need to carry forward that certainly the administration, President Obama, had pushed for his entire 8 years of office. And so when I think about going forward at NYU, you know, I looked at around 50 College Promise programs. And so if I fast forward, and this will be my last slide for you, although I had others, and I know the team here can give you any of these slides if you'd like them. And all you have to do is go to collegepromise.org to see this chart. You know, we now have over 150 communities, interfaith, everyone coming together to say, we are going to work on college affordability. And I'll just bring out from my last remark, you know, the city of Oakland. College affordability, College Promise starts at birth, and it goes through a lifetime. So if you want to look at the Oakland Promise, it's a great example of what needs to happen going forward. It's going to be a promise for all 2- and 4-year, for those students graduating from one of the most diverse, underrepresented high schools in the country. And so that's what we're doing. I want to thank you for just letting me come up here and talk about this. But this is what we want to carry forward for this generation and the generations to follow. And I want to thank Melissa, I want to thank President Cordano, and everyone here for leading the charge, because the Interfaith and Community Service Challenge, you are the campuses that are going to lead our country forward to have the kinds of students which will lead our country over the next many, many years. Thank you.
Hello. Well, thank you so much, Martha. We really appreciated you being with us again and coming back to see us. As I've said so many times, we couldn't do this initiative without so many partners, and I want to just give us a minute of thanks to some of those partners, who include, and I'd ask you just to raise your hands when I call your name, the Campus Challenge Working Group. Please raise your hand if you've been a part of that initiative. Thank you for your work there. And you can hold your applause because I'm going to go through several. The International Shinto Foundation. Dr. Haruhisa Honda? Yay, all right. Mrs. Midori Miyazaki, raise your hand if you're here. Kevin O'Brien. Ambassador Brendan Scannell. Thank you to the International Shinto Foundation for their support. That's great. And also to our international guest organizers, Cassandra Lawrence from the Hartford Seminary. Raise your hand if you're here, Hartford Seminary. All right. And also a dear friend, Melody Fox Ahmed, who is Yay! She is Associate Director for Programs at the Berkeley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs at Georgetown University. And they have worked so closely with us and so hard and made this day, they own this day as much as any of us. So I want to say a special word of thanks to them. And also I want to welcome Melody to the stage now to introduce us to the next part of our program. Thank you, Melody.
Thank you so much, Melissa, and everyone for making this day possible. I now have the distinct honor and privilege of introducing my boss, who is an inspiration to me in this work. Thomas Banshoff is Vice President for Global Engagement at Georgetown University. He also serves as founding director of the Berkeley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs, and a professor in the Department of Government and the School of Foreign Service. He is a world-renowned scholar on ethics and global religious issues. To learn more about the cutting-edge scholarship on these issues, I encourage you to read some of his books, Religion and the Global Politics of Human Rights, and Religious Pluralism, Globalization, and World Politics. I could go on listing all of his many amazing books, all of his many degrees, but I think his position as Vice President of Global Engagement and Director of the Berkeley Center speaks to his lifelong scholarship and passion for these issues. He is a thought leader nationally and internationally, and on a personal level, someone who has made me think deeply about these issues and pushed me to advanced study and to meaningful change-making outreach work. So thank you, and we look forward to hearing from you, Tom.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. I want to thank you, Melody, for your kind words and for all the tremendous work you do for Georgetown in support of the President's Challenge. This has really been a wonderful session so far, I think you'll agree, with speaker after speaker reminding us of the importance of our work at the intersection of interfaith dialogue and community service. And as you've heard, we gather here for the 6th time as a community to take stock, to be proud of all that we've accomplished so far under the leadership of President Obama and with so many partners that Melissa outlined for you just now. But this week, this gathering is really about you, I think, and it's about the future. It's about your opportunity to share your experiences from around the world in your important work, but also an opportunity to reflect together on how we all can navigate a world marked by greater cultural and religious diversity, but also a world threatened by so many social and political divisions. This is an opportunity, as in previous years, to think together about how best to engage this intersection of interfaith dialogue and community service for the common good. Now, in my brief remarks, I'm not going to give you a lecture or anything. In my brief remarks, I'd like to focus on the role of universities or colleges, institutions of higher education, on what is specific to our identity and mission that makes our presence here so relevant. What sets us apart? It's easy to forget because many of us are so oriented toward engagement with the wider world. What sets us apart is we are communities of learning, places of teaching, of inquiry, of research. Now, we're also committed to the common good, to service, to wider engagement, but in connection with that core academic mission. Now, of course, universities, I'll say universities, but I mean this wider set of higher education institutions, have never been about academics in isolation. They've always been embedded within social and political orders. They've always been engaged with their wider context. Since the birth of universities in the Middle Ages, they have been set up. They've been funded, very important, funded by governments, by powerful social groups, to build and share knowledge, of course, that's the research and teaching, but also to contribute to the common good, to train students as citizens of the wider society, to instill in them a sense of responsibility, a commitment to service to the wider community. I want to suggest that one way to think about our enterprise here, about the President's Challenge, is as a kind of creative and powerful way to update and exercise this role, this exercise of social responsibility of our institutions of higher education in a globalizing world, in our current era, which is so interconnected, so diverse, and marked by so many divisions. So how does this relate back to our core academic mission of learning, teaching, and inquiry? It's important that we reach out, that we engage with the wider community, that we pursue service activities of all kinds. We are part of a movement that has grown and must continue to grow, given the challenges that confront our society and the international community. But even as we go out into the world, we must return, we should return to our classrooms, to our libraries, to our dormitories, to other campus spaces, and ask ourselves, what have we learned? How has our engagement outside the university deepened our understanding of the forces shaping our world? How can being on the frontiers, being engaged in dialogue and service with others, become a learning experience not just for us, but for our institutions? How can we embed this knowledge, this experience within the life of the university? We can do so, and I think you're all doing so in different ways, but we can do better, whether it's the context of courses or seminars, new structures, departments, majors, institutes, or, of course, the creation and the maintenance of vibrant co-curricular spaces for interaction around these ideas and these values. So the experience of being out in the world can transform and strengthen our educational institutions at home. This is a challenge we each take on individually within our institutions. There are some dynamic organizations, I think in particular of Ibu Patel and the Interfaith Youth Corps, that are working across institutions to help with this embedding. I thought I'd just give you a couple quick examples from Georgetown as one way that we've tried to grapple with this challenge. We are the oldest Catholic and Jesuit university in the United States, founded in 1789, the year of the American Constitution. And if you know the Society of Jesus, you know the Jesuits, you know they embody an identity open to interfaith, intercultural dialogue, and committed to advancement of the common good. We have, of course, a campus ministry, we have community outreach programs, but we've also tried to build academic structures that allow us to connect the experience of dialogue and service back to our core academic mission. The Berkeley Center, which Melody mentioned, we founded 10 years ago with a specific intent to advance interfaith dialogue for the common good and alongside, in connection with, in a mutually reinforcing way, to advance the interdisciplinary study of religion and its role in world affairs. We also have a Center for Jewish Civilization at Georgetown, a Center for Muslim Christian Understanding, all designed as spaces for faculty and students to study the intersection of religion with other issues of the day. And we hope to incorporate the lessons learned through outreach and engagement of the kind that we're all involved with and celebrating and advancing this week. As I said, Georgetown's experience is only one among many. And as we pool our efforts around service and dialogue, a sort of outward movement, let us also continue to look back, to look inward into our institutions. Let us share our experiences on that front too, and work together to bolster the academic work of our institutions of higher education, to deepen our understanding of a rapidly changing world and its religious dynamics, and to raise awareness of the positive role of faith communities in addressing critical social issues in our global age. And here's a key point. I think that if we're successful in this effort, our deeper knowledge, if we can embed it within our curriculum and our co-curriculum, will also shape the perspectives of so many of our colleagues, fellow students and faculty and staff in our institutions who are not engaged in this outward-looking service. We can help them to take a deeper, to appreciate a deeper understanding of this moment and of the positive role that religious communities can play, to give them a grounding in the importance of religious literacy and understanding and dialogue, not just for them as students, say, but also as future citizens, whether they go into business, government, or other sectors. So building this bridge that I'm talking about back to the academy, embedding the lessons and the learnings of our efforts at dialogue and community service is not easy. I think we all know that the dominant view in society and in the academy is that religion is almost always part of the problem and not part of the solution, that it is tightly bound up with fanaticism, extremism, and violence. Again, not my views, but the dominant views, at least that we encounter in this particular corner of the world when we raise these issues in a broader academic session context. I think we can make a case for the importance of religion, the potential for religion, its positive potential through dialogue and service in action. But I also think we can reinforce that case through research and teaching, through the knowledge building and sharing that is the core business of our institution. So let's work together on both fronts into the future, community engagement, but also reflection, linked back to our academic mission into the future. I think the task of combining those two is a challenge, a key dimension of the wider campus challenge. It's one of the most difficult dimensions of that challenge, but I think also one of the most important and potentially transformative. So in conclusion, I want to echo the other speakers in thanking you for being part of this wider effort. Wish you all the best in your ongoing conversations and in your action together this week and beyond. Thank you again for being engaged in this important work.
Thank you, Tom, for your ideas and all your support of this work. It's It's now my pleasure to introduce a young woman who you all know, the dedicated, the unflappable, the indomitable Miss Anna Leach, Special Assistant at the Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships at the Department of Education. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you all. Welcome to DC. I've said it in so many emails, but I really am. We are all so excited to have you here. I have a few quick logistical items for you, and then we'll get you back out in this beautiful sunshiny day to head off to your breakout sessions. When all of you got here, you picked up a welcome packet. This is your guide to getting around campus and getting around DC. One thing I definitely want to point out to you is you'll find there's 3 blank pages at the back of the program. Save those. You can maybe use one for notes, but the rest are to collect back Q&A over the next plenary sessions, which our moderators will guide at that time, but please save those pages for your questions. That agenda and our welcome packet are both online. We ask that you just take one for yourself so we don't run out, but it is online on our website. Feel free to download it to your phone, use that as an access. Our Twitter account is EdPartners and is tweeting out right now a map of campus, so you can save that to your phone and help get you around campus. There are also student guides that are around to point you around campus, and so look for them. They're very excited to welcome you to Gallaudet and show you what they're most proud of, which is things we all hold true here together. There is, if you happen to find any items or lose an item, lost and found is at registration. There is also no bathroom in Foster Auditorium, so if you're going there, please just remember that and stop in here on the way out. And just uniquely this year, we have our first ever lunch breakout sessions. They're listed tomorrow. There's 3 different sessions. Check them out in advance. Start to think through what you're doing. There's also some great lunch options here on campus and right off campus. And finally, personal joy of mine is to be tweeting throughout this experience. I hope you'll join me online. The hashtag is PICSCC. And we're at EdPartners. We just surpassed 10,000 followers while sitting here, so thank you all for following us. We're very excited about that and continue to grow, so I hope to engage online, especially as all of these are live streamed. So share this news with your colleagues and friends back home. We're really excited to share this beyond just our campus this year. And my last note is I've been really touched to see how all of you have embraced this community. My most favorite moment so far has been learning that this is the sign for applause. If you didn't know that, now you do. So going forward, the sign for applause is this. So thank you for being here. We're really excited, and go on out to your breakout sessions. Thanks.